All right, we'll go ahead and get started with the next episode of Every Citizen Armed. Today, we're joined by, Ronnie Jeffries. I think we've been trying to get you on for a while. This is awesome. I appreciate you taking the time. I know you have a lot going on, so I appreciate it a lot. Thanks for coming. But first, we really do have to get through and pay the bills. So when we take a look at the other side of this, firearms legal protection. We've all seen it in the news. Someone defends themselves or their loved ones only to find themselves fighting a legal battle that can cost everything. Mortgage payments, retirement savings, even their kids' college funds, gone, just to prove they did nothing wrong. That's why Firearms Legal Protection, the official sponsor of Every Citizen Armed, exists. For as little as 33 cents a day, FLP gives you unlimited legal defense for criminal and civil cases. No caps, no hidden fees, no surprise bills. If you have to defend yourself, FLP will handle the legal battle so you can focus on what matters: your family, your future, your freedom. We insure our homes, cars, and health. Why wouldn't we protect ourselves legally when it matters most? Go to firearmslegal.com, choose your plan, and use promo code ECA at checkout for exclusive pricing. No setup fee and a locked-in lifetime rate. Protect yourself today, and Firearms Legal Protection will have your back when it matters most.
Every Citizen Armed ensures that every American patriot is prepped with knowledge, perspective, and firepower.
He counted on America to be passive. He counted wrong.
Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
I'll let you go through your background a little bit. I know a little bit, but I've only met you once. I was just so impressed when we met. I wanted you to come on, and I know probably you look at that and you wonder why. A lot of the things you said during our first conversation stuck, and I just thought that is really cool. So I wanted you to come on. So kind of tell everybody who you are, what you've done. I know you did a little military, you did, law enforcement. I'll let you get into that a little bit.
Sure. Well, first off, thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here. And anytime I get to come onto a podcast and kind of, not only promote myself, my business, and I guess my background a little bit, I have fun doing these things, and I enjoy being a part of them, and I enjoy watching other companies grow, such as yourselves. So my background, grew up not too far from Kern County. I was actually from Tulare County. Grew up there in a small town, did everything that most normal young boys did, played football, played basketball. From a young age, knew I was going to go in the military. My dad was an Army guy. My brothers were Army guys. So from, as my dad would say, knee high to a grasshopper, right. I already knew I was going to go into the military, specifically the Army.
Now, remind me a little bit later, I heard a story about you. I want to get back to it. When you were young, and you got a 30-year anniversary coming up. Just because I happen to hear something, we're going to talk about that a little bit. So,
it's coming up.
So you saw that you want to join the military.
So wanted to go in the military. Obviously, 9/11 happened. I want to say that I was I believe a sophomore in high school when that happened. So once that happened, it basically solidified all of the things that were going on in my head already. Going in, and now there was more than just, I want to go in the military. Now there was like a reason why. There was a why behind it. There was a purpose. Signed up when I was 17 and left. Ended up having to have my dad sign the contract because I was too young to do it. Did that for 8 years. Had an absolute blast. No regrets. The only thing I wish I had not done was get out.
8 years. You did a little bit of time. It was like, where's that extra 12? Go ahead and finish it off.
So kind of wish I would have stayed in, in hindsight. But again, I'm not upset with the decision of getting out because it changed the course of my life and for the better. So I got out, really had no intentions of becoming a cop. To be quite honest, I wasn't a big fan of cops back then. And it was more out of like an uneducated perspective. I just didn't know what they did on a day-to-day, and I had a skewed perception of them based on like media and maybe movies or, just social media type stuff. That's really all I knew about the job. I didn't have any family that were law enforcement. I didn't have any friends that were law enforcement. So my perspective of them was kind of skewed.
So what brought you to it? That's kind of interesting to go from that perspective and then go ahead and come on in.
Yeah. So what ended up happening was I ended up having a son. So like kind of go forward, but me and my wife had a child. When we got together, I had a 4-year-old daughter with her. She brought that along with her. And shortly thereafter, she got pregnant. And at the time, I was working in a warehouse job that I absolutely hated. I knew I needed to do something better to, support my family. And I just wasn't sure what I was going to do. So what I decided was I'm going to go back to school. I'm going to go to college, and I'm going to become a nurse. So while doing that, a friend of ours asked us if he could come over for dinner one night. A mutual friend of me and my wife's came over for dinner and was like, hey, I'm thinking about signing up for the Bakersfield Police Department. And I said, well, that'd be kind of cool.
Yeah.
You should do that. And he's like, no, I want you to do it with me. And I was like, no, I'm not police material. Like, they wouldn't hire me. They don't want a guy like me. And he's like, dude, they love veterans. Like, it would be great. And I said, long story short, he talked me into it. So we sign up. Oddly enough, I get hired and he doesn't. And I go into the police academy not knowing what it's like. That's another interesting thing is I had talked to some guys from like police departments from where I grew up, and they said, oh, it's not too bad. It's kind of like a gym class. Like the physical fitness is like a gym class. The classroom time is more of like a college atmosphere. And I was like, oh, okay, I could do that. I've just been doing college. I'd finished all my prereqs for nursing. I'm like, that shouldn't be too hard.
My son went through the academy, and from what you described, had nothing to do with what he described when he went through it.
I learned real quick. It was completely false. Yeah. Now that may have been that guy's experience because he went to a police academy in Tulare County. My experience was far different. I went into the police academy weighing around 250 pounds. I was like a big time weightlifter and stuff. I graduated the police academy at 205.
That's pretty much what I remember, actually.
And it was. They were real nice to us in the beginning. Hey guys, come on in. Just line your bags up, and then like, hey, just go stand in this little grass area, and you just wait for further instruction. I didn't really think much of it, and then they all come busting out of the door, screaming and yelling. I'm like, oh god, not again! Like I just got done doing this like 8 years ago.
Did it remind you of a little bit of boot camp?
Yeah, but it was way worse. It wasn't that the physical fitness was worse than the military. It was just like I was older. And I wasn't in as good a shape as I was at 17. So, like, running 3 miles at 26 wasn't the same as it was at 17. In 17, I could run 3 miles with my, stand on my head. But at 26 and a little heavier, not so much. But it was a really good experience. I really valued the way that the academy was run back then. Not to say that it's bad or good now. I don't know. I don't have anything to do with it. But I really liked the way the academy was ran at that time because it instilled a lot of discipline and a lot of character into everybody that was going through it. And I think that it helped prepare us for life as a police officer far better than most of the non-stress type academies.
Well, you're never showing up just to say hi to somebody.
No.
You're not showing up at a good time. It's not everybody's birthday party. You're showing up on their worst days.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I wish more young people realized before going into the profession. I would never try to discourage somebody from going into it. I would just rather educate them on what you're about to experience. I say that having a nephew who's currently in works for the same police department that I worked for. And after his graduation party, everybody was super happy and celebrating. And they asked me to give a speech, and I'm like, I don't really have anything like great to say. I said, unfortunately, you're about to experience more trauma in 1 year than most people would experience in 10 lifetimes. And I said, while I'm happy that I know you're going to be a good police officer and I know you're going to do great things, it upsets me knowing the amount of trauma you're going to have to take and deal with and cope with however you see fit.
I think that gets overlooked a lot. We talked a little bit about it on our last episode with a couple of BPD officers, one retired, one still working. I don't think the general public really thinks about the post-traumatic stress that law enforcement on a daily basis, of what you have to see, what you have to deal with. And we're all very in tune with what's happening with the military. Mm-hmm. And that's a thought process all the time. our law enforcement, first responders have to see that every day. And I think it needs to be thought of more,
right?
Appreciated more.
Right. I couldn't agree more. What I wish people knew is, just how awful it can be. And the thing is you get people that get upset with police officers quite frequently. Some of it 100% relevant or legitimate.
Sure.
But they get upset, and they talk about things like, well, this officer came to my house and, he didn't care, or he didn't make it seem like what I had going on was super important, and I spoke at a public forum once about this when I was in our community relations unit, and a guy brought up this exact scenario. He said, my house was burglarized, and the officer came, and the officer just seemed like he didn't care. And I said, okay. I said, while your issue may be 100% legitimate, and that officer should have to answer for that and should handle himself more professionally, what did he just come from? And he's like, he goes, well, I don't know. And I was like, neither do I. I go, did he come from a baby that had just drowned? Did he come from a domestic violence situation, and maybe he grew up in a house with domestic violence, and it affects him? Did he go to a missing child? And I'm like, while it doesn't excuse anything, it might open your eyes and give you a little bit different perspective. I go, so while I don't excuse what he did, and I don't justify his actions or her actions, I just want you to understand, like, at the time, it may not have been the most important thing because something else may have been weighing on him or her.
Yeah.
And he goes, wow, never really thought about it like that. And I was like, yeah, dude, like, and I go, again, it doesn't justify it. All I want to do is just open your eyes and show you a little bit different perspective. Like, look at things through our lens sometimes. We don't always get to pick and choose which calls we go to and when we get to go to them. There are times where you're going to go to like something that will legitimately stay with you forever, like the death of a child. Like, I could tell you every one that I've been to, and I remember every call.
Yeah.
I remember most of their names because I wrote them down.
Yeah.
Because it was one of those things that, like, it stayed with me.
If we could get more folks to understand that, and except we try and do that on here a little bit. So I'm glad you brought that up, because that's something that I know a lot of police officers. We have a lot of mutual friends, actually. Yeah. It's turning out more and more. And listening to them and what they see on a daily basis. Same thing with correction officers. I toured a prison one time. I'd never want to do that again in my life. What those guys see every day. And there's correction officers and that. You guys all have to see some stuff that nobody really wants to see. So we appreciate y'all being out there. I can tell you that.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, is like, nobody wants pity for that. Nobody wants sympathy for that. We just want understanding.
Right.
And the other thing is that, while the military is like, you're groomed for that stuff. Like, they tell you, like, hey, you're going to experience death. You're going to experience tragedy. And so that's something that's like very much trained into your brain at that time. They do a really good job of brainwashing you in whatever military branch you choose to go into. At least they did when I went in.
Sure.
But, in the police department, they don't really talk about that. They talk about some of the, like, briefly in the academy, like, that you might experience some stuff like that, but they don't really talk about it much. It's not something that's really covered all that deeply. And a lot of times, you're seeing things that would not only bother the average person, but now you're seeing it in your hometown, right. And it could be somebody like car accidents, DUI crashes, babies drowning. Like, that kind of stuff can hit home so much more, because as a police officer, especially as a police officer in the city you live in, you experience things that are, sometimes around the corner from your house. Mm-hmm. They might be your neighbor. They might be your friend. It might be your kid's football friend.
Yeah.
So while I don't think that it hits any less in the military, like, that's one of the things that I think can affect people even more as somebody in law enforcement, especially if you are law enforcement in the community that you live in, is that you can have those things like real close to home, and things that can affect you not just on a professional level, but on a personal level as well.
So do you feel that your military service kind of prepared you a little bit for law enforcement, or is very different, so it doesn't necessarily?
No, I think that it prepared me quite a bit. And I wouldn't say that it prepared me necessarily to do the job, where it prepared me was like mental strength. The things that I had done in the military and experienced really kind of made me strong mentally, physically as well too. Like I was in pretty decent shape, and I knew how to just get through stuff.
Sure.
But like mentally, it more prepared me because I was already used to people yelling at me. I was already used to dealing with, bad things happening, seeing bad things. So for me, it was a little bit easier to process those things and to stay cool, calm, and collected, which is like one of the things that I think is maybe the most important skill you can have as a police officer or sheriff or whatever, is to be able to bring calm to chaos. That, I think, is one of the most important things you can do. Whether it's being able to stay calm to give other people reassurance that it's going to be okay, or to stay sharp and focused yourself to make sure that you don't get too riled up and that you can't perform. Because ultimately, our job is to perform in the fourth quarter with the game on the line every single day. Like we're, Tom Brady in the Super Bowl down by, 24 at halftime, but that's every day.
Right.
And you got to perform, because if you have one bad day, that can be the last one.
Yeah.
It's not, you don't get to come back next Sunday.
I've always been impressed. We owned a grocery store years back. We always dealt with shoplifters, and when law enforcement would show up, whether it was L.A. County or Upland PD or Ontario PD that we dealt with back then, when those guys would show up, and it's high stress for us because we've had a fight, we've had this, we've had that, whatever's going on, and those guys, they just come in, they're calm, they're not excited. My guys are wound up. They beat the hell out of some guy, whatever, who took a swing at them, and they're like, "Oh, we got this."
Yeah, and
they always handled it really well.
That's I think it's one of the most important things, and I don't know. Like I said, I don't have a whole lot to do with the police academy anymore.
Right.
But when I was there and I had a little bit of influence, or when I would help out with the academy, that was one of the things that I always brought up, was like, you guys have to be the concept professional. You have to bring calm to chaos. And I always wanted to reiterate that point. I told my wife, she goes, "You never get upset. You never get riled up. I never see you like frazzled." And I'm like, if I'm worked up, something's really bad. Yeah. Like we need to start running. 'Cause it's just one of those things. Like I like to say that I'm pretty good about staying pretty calm, regardless of what the situation is. And if I'm getting riled up, like things are real bad.
Well, I guess we know if we're ever around you and that happens, we'll run like hell then, because that's definitely. But so you medically retired out, if I remember right?
Yes, sir. So spent 13 years with Bakersfield Police Department. I was so fortunate. That department was amazing. I'm still actively trying to go back. So
are you really?
Yeah, absolutely. Like
you did a lot of great things when you were there.
I loved every minute of my time there. I was so fortunate, so lucky to be mentored by some of the guys that you had on your podcast already. Matter of fact, the last episode you had Ted King and Bobby Wood. Yeah. Ted King was, to this day, still one of my mentors.
He's awesome.
When I was a brand new cop, he was one of those guys that like helped bring me up the right way. Showed me, hey, this is how we do things. This is how we do business the right way. This is how we treat each other. This is how we treat our superiors. This is how we treat our peers and subordinates. And was just the concept professional and did phenomenal things. And obviously he's, what is he, a captain now?
He's captain now. Yeah, exactly.
I want to say that he was a detective when I started. But again, just a great human being and a phenomenal cop. I hope he went over it. Did he talk to you about the pumpkin?
He did not. Oh my gosh. Actually, we talked for 2 hours. I don't know how we did, but there's so many things to cover. Well, like I said, they're going to come back on.
Ask him about it. Ask him about the pumpkin report.
Okay.
He'll know what you're talking about.
Oh, I'm sure. There's plenty of stories for him and Bobby that we did not get to.
It's hilarious.
So we thought they've got to come back on, and because there was just so much, and it got a kick out of them. And they said the same thing about you, quite honestly.
That's awesome.
Oh yeah, no, I guess we end up knowing a lot of the same people in different circles here and there, or same circles. Yeah. And it was interesting. There'll be some other names even.
Oh yeah.
You probably know Mason.
Mason Westner?
Oh yeah.
Oh, Mason's a great human being.
Yeah.
When you meet him, you think he hates you, because he probably does. In the beginning.
He's like the nicest guy, though.
He was my background investigator.
Oh, was he?
So here's a funny story. So Mason, sorry Mason if I'm saying this, but I'm going to front you out here.
Yeah.
So he was my background investigator, and he would call me every so often. "Hey, Ronnie, how's it going? I got this, and this. Can you answer these questions? Sure, Mason, no problem. Or sir, you know. And I'd answered all of his questions, get through it, and he was just so nice. I'm like, man, what a cool dude. You know, I can't wait to meet this guy. So July 13th of 2013 was our orientation day. I think it was July 13th. I could be wrong. I might be one day off there. We had an orientation day where basically you went to the police department and they just kind of went over all the paperwork that you had to fill out, waivers, medical stuff, all the stuff that you had to just fill out just to get started. And I see a guy standing in the doorway and it says M. Westner. I'm like, can't be more than one Westner there. Come to find out there was 2 Westners in our department, but this was the right one. Yeah. And I'm like, M. Westner, that's got to be Mason Westner. And so I'm like, hey, sir, it's really nice to meet you. And I put my hand out to shake his hand. He looks at me and goes, and just walks away. It's like, wow. I'm like, he's been so nice over the phone. I'm like, maybe he's having a bad day, you know?
That's awesome.
And well, 2 days later, July 15th of 2013, when I started my first day of the police academy, he was one of those guys coming out of the door screaming, yelling, and I'm like, oh, makes a lot of sense now.
Now I got it.
But yeah, so 13 years in the PD, I start like everybody else. Everybody starts patrol. Yeah. I wanted to go weekend nights because that was at the time that was like what everybody in our academy told us. Like whoever it was that came and spoke to our academies, they said, hey, like hard chargers go weekend nights. Shift 1 is what it was called. Yeah. Still, everybody wants to go to shift 1 like that, but only go there if you want to work. And so from day one, I was like, I want to go to shift 1. Yeah. And so, me and a good chunk of my academy guys, we went to shift 1. We stayed there for, quite a while. And the guys who impressed me the most and who really intrigued me in the police academy was the guys from our gang unit. I was infatuated with that stuff. Like, I couldn't get enough of it. I would go home and watch Gangland, and I'm like, oh, I'm an expert already, Yeah. And far from it. But I was like, that's where I want to go. I want to go to, it was called SEU, or the Special Enforcement Unit. Yeah. And I wanted to go there so bad. So I worked my butt off, ended up making a good impression on those guys, fortunately. And on my 2-year anniversary, I got to go there.
That's pretty quick, isn't it?
Yeah, it's relatively quick. At the time, it was, people were taking usually around 4 to 5 years to get to a specialized unit like that. I was lucky. Like I said, I had some great mentors. I had a lot of guys looking out for me. So
I don't think it was luck. That's why. And that you aren't going to brag on yourself, but if you got there in 2 years, that speaks pretty highly of what you did when you started.
I just wanted to work my butt off. And, like I've always been a guy that had a good work ethic, I like to think. And when I put my head down and I go towards something, I'm usually pretty good about achieving goals. Yeah. And so that was my goal. So I wanted to make it to SEU, and sure enough, like on the 2-year anniversary, I think it was my exact 2-year anniversary, I got to go to SEU. Did that for almost 4 years, I believe. And to this day, it was the most fun I had in the police department. Yeah. It was an absolute blast. It was so fast-paced. It was just go, go, go. You're working crazy amounts of hours at the time because we had a lot of homicides at the time, ton of shootings. We had 2 young boys get shot and killed, one 3 years old, one 5 years old while I was in, and that fueled huge wiretap cases, which included ridiculous amounts of overtime and lots of work that we ended up having to put into those cases to make them where they ended up. But I had so much fun in that unit, and but you can only be successful in those kind of units if you have like a strong core at home. So while like my achievements seem really cool, 100% all the credit goes to my wife, because while I was off having fun with my friends, because I never felt like I was going to work. I honestly felt like I was going to have fun with my friends for 12, 15, 20, sometimes 40 hours straight.
Wow.
It was caffeine fueled fun. Like, it was rock stars and monsters and, nasty fast food and your buddies. Yeah. And it was go, go, go. And I had so much fun doing it. But I couldn't have done any of that without my wife at home taking care of the home front, because when I went to SU, I had 3 kids. I had my 2 boys and my oldest daughter. And then my youngest son was born while I was in gangs. And, so I had 4 kids, and my wife's home alone with these kiddos, 3 young boys like running amok, you know,
speaks pretty highly of her.
100%. Like, and the other thing is, like, I don't think I would have been as successful in the police academy had it not been for her. Now, I was fortunate in the police academy. I was a top graduate in my class. Again, all the credit goes to her, because when I would get home, she would have an ice bath ready for me, because my knees would be hurting so bad, my back would be hurting so bad. Like I said, I was an older guy. I was 26, and I was one of the older guys in my academy.
Right.
I think there was 2 people older than me in my academy. But she would have ice bath ready for me, hand me a dinner plate while I'm in the bath.
Wow.
So I'm eating, because I lived in Porterville at the time, and I'm driving every day to come to Bakersfield to go to the police academy, and absolutely wiped out at the end of the day.
Sure. I were watching my son, and it beat the hell out of him.
Yeah, and so I'm driving an hour here, an hour back every day.
Yeah.
And so I was losing at least 2 to 2.5 hours a day with the drive.
Sure.
You know, that like I could have been sleeping or whatever, or studying or writing the countless memos that you have to write. So, you know, she would have all that ready for me. She would iron my uniform. She'd have everything ready. All I had to do was shine my boots, take a bath, and go to sleep.
Wow.
So again, like, while I tell some fun stories and a lot of it sounds like Ronnie, it's 100% my wife is the rock star
Probably
of,
should
of
have
my
her in
family.
here instead of you. Is that
She's she would never say it, but she's far more accomplished than me. She is a rock star of a human being, and she is why our family is as successful and as great as we are.
Yeah.
It's 100% because of her. She's the rock and the foundation of everything.
That's very cool, and I think you guys are in a very tough profession as it is, so you got to have that behind you.
Yeah.
I think that's why we see so many marriages deteriorate, because it's hard on all of them.
Absolutely. Like, now we've gone through patches. Like, I'm not going to say that it's been, you know, sunshine and rainbows for 15 years. We've gone through some tough stuff, and some of that was induced by me, whether it was stress that I was feeling at work and I brought it home. I tried to do a really good job of like turning it off. When I got home and I took my stuff off, I would like stand in my garage for a little bit and just kind of like get back to zero, or, you know, get back to homeostasis. And then I would come in the house and I'd be dad and husband.
How long did you live in Porterville after you got hired? How long did you stay in Porterville?
For 2 years.
So you were on the force for 2 years.
Yeah.
Do you think that drive home helped you unwind on the way home?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
And the only reason I say sometimes is, so at the time I worked midnights, and I get off at 7 a.m. and I'd be driving home and I'd be exhausted.
Right.
And then sometimes it'd be 7 a.m. and then I'd have to go to court at 8.
Oh.
And so I'd get off at 7, go to court at 8, be in court until 5, and then I'd go back to work.
Yeah,
because it was straight back to work. So sometimes I never even got to go home. I would just sleep in my car for a couple hours and then go right back to being 10-8.
Wow.
And then the times that I did go home after court, there was a specific time I almost went head on with a semi, and I pulled over, and after I got done cleaning my pants out, I called my wife and I said, if we don't move to Bakersfield, I'm ended up dead. Yeah, I can't keep doing this.
People on here, a lot of them will know Highway 65, and I'm sure that's what you were on.
Highway 65, 100%. I was right before the Delano exit.
Yeah,
and
it's a scary road.
Oh man, I'm not sure I've had a closer call with what would have been a fatal collision. I would have been dead.
Sure,
I was in like a little tiny Chevy car, but after that we decided we're gonna pack up the family and move to Bakersfield. Now here again, why I say she's such a rock star. So we lived in Bakersfield. My kids went to school in Porterville.
Holy smoke.
Because they had went there, and she's like, well, I don't want to uproot them from their school, all their friends. And I said, okay, well, like, how are we going to make this work?
Yeah.
She goes, I'm going to drive them every day. She also works in Porterville. So she would drive them to school, go to work, take her lunch, and her lunch break was basically picking my kids up from school.
Wow.
And thankfully her job has been amazing, still are amazing.
Is she still up there?
Still works there to this day.
Wow.
Yeah. Drives every day.
Yeah, that company's awesome.
They're so family friendly. So what they would let her do is they would let her take my sons from school and take them to their break room, and they could just hang out in the break room and do their homework and whatever they need to do while she finished work. And then she'd drive them home. Would
she be okay with you mentioning the company name? Because I think they should be hihighlighted. If not, don't worry about it. But I don't think that they'd have a problem with it. They're full circle farming. She works she works for a farming company, and she does all of their management. She's actually the manager now of the office. Okay.
She worked, again, rock star. She started as a temp, however many years, like 13 years ago, 14 years ago. Started off as a temp, and now she runs the whole office. I just think more companies could listen to that and learn from that, and they've been
keep great people
so amazing. And You know, like she'll never leave. Like they've done so well by us that we're so loyal to them.
Oh, absolutely.
Well,
that's great. That's perfect.
Yeah. So we moved to Bakersfield 2 years in. That's right when I went to the gang unit. And then, you know, I told my wife, I said, hey, give me these, because typically a specialized unit detail is 3 years in our department. Unfortunately, I would have stayed in gangs forever. I love it.
I think it would probably mess with your brain a little bit after a certain amount of time.
Probably, but what everybody that's I think ever been in that unit says is that 3 years you start getting really good at it.
Oh,
that's when you really are like, I can do this with my eyes closed. I can write every search warrant you need. I can get, you know, warrants for phones. I can ping phone. I can do all that stuff, and you don't even skip a beat. You know all the gang members' names. You know their birthday. I knew monikers, birthdays, and all that stuff better than I knew my own kids' birthdays.
Why do you think they pull them out? Are they afraid that the officer's going to get too close to?
They just want turnover. They want to.
Oh, they just want turnover. Okay.
I think their reasoning has always been, we just want to spread the wealth. We want more people that have that experience.
Okay. All right.
Which I understand. I don't always agree with, but I do get it.
We don't have to agree with it.
Right. That's a great thing. And I will say that's one of the best things about the department that I worked for is all of the guys that were in my chain of command, especially once I got onto the SWAT team, it was a true open door policy. You know, that's said a lot in departments and in jobs, open door. You can say whatever you want, you know, rank goes out the window. That was a fact with BPD. Like, at least with the guys that I dealt with, like with SWAT, you could go in and tell somebody, hey, this is messed up. You screwed up, and I want to tell you why. And they'd say, okay, well, let's hear it. Now, they may not agree with you, and they may tell you their perspective, but they would hear it, and there would be no repercussions. It wasn't like, oh, okay, and now you're on the crap details after that. No, it was a true open door, like rank was gone, and it was great. It made our SWAT team function so good because we knew that we could go from the top down, and everybody had to be held accountable, because the only way for a unit like that to thrive is if everybody's accountable for your actions, and if we're all willing to admit when we're wrong and get better. Yeah,
that's listening to other guys talk in the military, the SEALs guys and so forth. They talk about how they could all come up with the plans, and that it sounds a lot like that. It's, you know, call them on the BS at times, and but there might have been something that captain knew that you didn't know. 100%. Now you're going like, oh, okay, yeah. Now I see why you did it that way.
And that happened more times than I could count. And then you say, okay, cool, didn't know that. Right. You're right, but you were still able to do it.
Yeah, that's pretty high praise.
Yeah. So going back a little bit, once I got out of the gang unit, I went back to patrol for a while, had fun doing that, and I got called to go to our community relations unit. I was so reluctant to go to that unit. I was mad, actually. I went into now assistant chief. Can I name names?
No, absolutely.
Yeah. So I went into now assistant chief Stratton's office.
We've had some of them on.
Yeah,
I mean Donnie sat in that seat not too long ago.
Oh, very cool.
Oh yeah.
So I went into assistant chief Stratton's office. I don't remember if he was a lieutenant or a captain at the time, but I went into his office and I was like, "Hey, sir, like, I'm not a fan of this decision at all." And he's like, "Don't really care, Ronnie. This is why." And he said his reasoning why, and I was like, "Man, I can't. I want to argue it, but I can't. Like, he's making like valid points." And I'm like, I hate when somebody makes valid points and I can't even argue it.
You're supposed to agree with me, damn it.
Right? So I'm like, all right, you know, and again, I wasn't a huge fan of it, but I couldn't argue his points. And I was like, I see why you're doing this, and I can't argue it. So I'm going to do it. And I'm going to do it to the best of my ability because that's just how I do things. I'm never going to half-ass anything. Yeah. So I went to community relations, and then I fell in love with it. I thought it was a blast.
Sounds like they saw something in you that you weren't necessarily seeing in yourself.
Maybe that was it. I was fortunate enough to go, I guess, up there because it was upstairs. But I went there with a buddy of mine, Ryan Skidmore, who's still great friends. He's no longer with the department, just decided it wasn't for him anymore. Yeah. But we were in there and we had a blast. We worked our butts off, and we understood the value of that unit. We understood that we were the voice of the department for the people who aren't dealing with police due to like calls for service, like community engagement groups, neighborhood watch. So we got to go to those meetings and we could talk to people offline outside of a call for service, which doesn't happen all that often.
I think that particular area, and we talked about it a little bit last time with Ted and Bobby, is probably one of the most important positions in law enforcement. From an outsider looking in, I'll put it that way, because I never was. People don't get to see you guys show up in the good times, show up in the bad times. But I think people need to see you doing that stuff to build that connection, and I think it's huge. I've always felt that more and more, especially young folks, need to see the uniform show up in a good time, whether it be a carnival, whether it be whatever, I don't care. Just something, not when you're having to handcuff dad or mom and take them away. So doing that, I think with your past, I think it was actually perfect for you to go into that. I can see why they put you there.
Yeah. So by the time I went to the community relations unit, I guess I could back up a little bit. While I was in the gang unit, I was fortunate enough to get picked up for our range staff, which is firearms trainer. That's where I developed my unhealthy obsession with shooting pistols, which continues to this day. And I made the SWAT team, and I was on the SWAT team up until the day I ended up retiring. So good at community relations. So I had a good background. I had a good, a diverse background, or I guess diverse experience level with what I had done and what I'd been around in the department. And I think that what it was that I brought myself and Officer Skidmore, we brought a good perspective and a good background to that unit. Both guys, both of us are decent speakers, I'd like to think. And we can kind of give people perspective because we had done the hard jobs. We had done because he was also in the gang unit with me. So we had done those tough assignments. We'd been on the SWAT team. We'd been on patrol weekend nights. And so we could answer questions that a lot of officers that had been in that unit couldn't answer. Not to say that we're any better or worse than they are, but I thought that we just brought a different perspective and different experiences to that unit. And I think that that's what Chief Stratton was trying to do with that.
Sure.
And it wasn't until after I had been in the unit for a little bit that I realized the importance of guys like me and Ryan being in there. I was like, wow, this was actually a chess move on Chief Stratton's part, a good one too. Not to say that I was the best fit for that job because there's probably better people, but I was a good fit.
Right.
And so was Ryan. And I'd like to think that, the lady who runs that, she's a dear friend of mine now, Karina. Love her and her family to death. And I think that if you talk to her, she'd probably tell you that we were a good fit. We were the perfect fit for her unit at that time.
Right.
And loved it. Unfortunately, COVID came along right as my time in community relations was kind of getting going. So once that happened, they kicked not everybody out, but they kicked out me and Ryan.
Yeah. We
went back to patrol. Shortly thereafter, I ended up getting promoted to senior officer. So once you make some rank, you're back on the bottom of the totem pole.
Yeah, you lose all that seniority, don't you?
So I was back on weekend nights, which is cool. I loved it.
Yeah.
Went back to weekend nights, had a blast, was living the dream. And I got asked, shortly after I got promoted, I got asked by, again, another boss who I think you guys should have on here. His name's Chris Knutson. He's one of my better friends and the best supervisor I've ever had, whether military or police. I've yet to come across somebody who cared more about his guys than Chris Knutson. Dan McAfee, another great one.
Yeah.
Those two guys were my sergeants in the gang unit, and I could not have asked for a better pair of sergeants. But Chris Knutson was that I'd die for that dude. That guy was awesome. He made it fun when it needed to be fun. It was serious when it needed to be serious. And he took care of us. And he cared about not just us, but our families, which it's not common.
Right.
To have a boss that genuinely cares. And I'm not saying that in a bad way, but most bosses, they care about your work product and what you do, while you're 10-8. And that's their job. But he went beyond that and cared not only about that, but hey, is it your kid's birthday? Well, why don't you go home and hang out at the birthday party for a little bit? If we need you, we'll call you.
Perfect.
That's stuff that that's what leadership is. It's influencing people to want to work for you.
I say it keeps people there.
Yeah, like I didn't have to work for Chris. I didn't have to come in 7 days a week when I was in gangs. I wanted to work for him.
Sure.
Because I wanted to show up for him. I wanted to make sure that we put out a good product for him. So when it came time for evals, it was like, dude, you have this unit running amazing. But it's because we all bought into it, and we all wanted to work for him because of how much we loved him. Like he's just a great human being.
Well, we'll have to get him on
and a big
talk about
like
that.
Big jokester too, like great dude though.
No.
But yeah, so I'd gotten promoted back to weekend nights, and he called me and he said, "Hey, Ronnie, I want you to come to traffic." And I was like, "No thanks," because at the time it was like you go to traffic, you have to be a DUI car, you got to do work crashes and all this stuff. And I'm like, I go, look, how about this, sir? I'll come to traffic if you put me. So they were just revamping the motor program. And I said, hey, how about this? I'll come to traffic if you put me straight on a bike. And he goes, I can't do that. He's like, you know that you have to go into a car and you got to do all the other stuff first. And I said, I don't want to do it then. He's like, all right. So I kept doing patrol.
Did you ask him who you pissed off to throw you into that car? No,
So
I hear that about traffic. That's why they're like, oh, I don't want to do that.
Well, it just wasn't the job that I wanted to do. Yeah. It's a great job and it's super important. Like maybe arguably the most important unit in our department because of how affected we are by DUIs and DUI crashes here in Kern County. So I don't discount it at all. It's a phenomenal unit, and the guys working in it or the guys and gals in it are amazing cops.
Yeah.
Just not something that was on my radar or anything that I wanted to do at the time. So I said, no, I'm good, And so about, I don't know, maybe somewhere between 3 and 6 months later, he calls me and says, hey, Ronnie, that offer's still out there? And I was like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, you done forgot.
He says, what if I bring you to traffic and I put you straight on a bike, put you right into motor school? And I was like, done. So the reason I wanted to do that is at this time I had accomplished, I went to the gang unit. I spent time on patrol. I felt like I was pretty successful there. I went to the gang unit. I felt like I was pretty successful there. I was on the SWAT team. I was doing good things on the SWAT team. I was, in a leadership type capacity there. I was on the range staff. I was one of the lead instructors for our range staff. I was an RTO, so I would help out with the academies, yelling and screaming and mentoring, I guess. More of the yelling and screaming for me. The other guys would do the mentoring.
Different kind of mentoring.
Yeah. But, I'd done all this other stuff, but I'd always heard from other officers, motor school is the hardest school you'll ever do in the police department. And I was like, because I've always been that guy from the time I was a little kid to even now. Like, what's the next challenge?
Yeah.
I'm always looking forward. I'm never content. I'm never satisfied, which is why I'm trying to come back to work because, fortunately I have a doctor's appointment coming up to, hopefully get some good news. But back to this. So, everybody had told me, hey, motor school is the hardest thing you'll do. It's way harder than this. It's way harder than that. And I said, okay, well then I need to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And at that point they had started bringing back the motors. And, at the time, I think he was a lieutenant at this time. So Lieutenant Knudsen at the time, he's a captain now. But he called me and he said, hey, you come straight on the bike. And I was like, let's do it.
Was this about 1920, 21?
So this was in 2020, yeah, maybe 2020, 2021.
Kind of the throes of COVID.
Yeah.
Okay.
So right around there, went to motor school, and they could not have been more right. It was by far no close comparison the hardest thing I did in the police department.
What made it so challenging?
The mental aspect of it. It wasn't physical. Ride a motorcycle is riding a motorcycle. I rode a motorcycle here. It ain't hard.
Yeah.
The style of riding that those guys can do, those instructors like Adam Clayton, Justin Inns, Rich Robles, those guys are next level, like great, like insane what those guys can do with the bike and what they're able to teach other people how to do with the bike. I would have never made it through had it not been for Adam and Justin. Great instructors. Like I've modeled some of the things some of the ways I instruct firearms from how they instructed me going through motor school. Like it influenced me as an instructor because the way their patience, the way they would explain like, hey, this is all you need to do, man. You're overthinking it. And when me and the guys I went through with, Aaron and Chris Denman, Aaron Waddell, and Chris Denman and these other guys that I went through motor school with, when we'd get frustrated and we'd get mad because, I'm used to performing. I'm used to being good. I've been on the SWAT team at this point for probably 10 years almost. I'm used to being really good at what I do. And right now I look like a baby giraffe trying to walk.
A little bit humbling, was it?
Oh, so humbling. But those guys, again, they would bring, just like I said, they'd bring that calm.
Yeah.
Hey, Ronnie, you got this, dude. You're good. Relax. It's going to click. They kept saying, it's going to click. It's going to click. And I'm like, I don't know what you guys are talking about. It's not clicking. Nothing's happening. There's no click happening here. So motor school's 2 weeks long. Your first week is test week. Your second week is long ride week. Well, the only way you get to go to long ride week, or ride week, I don't even know what they call it, but is if you pass test week. So we have 5 tested patterns. We have the W, and you have to do it both ways. So you have to enter it from the right and enter it from the left. You have the speed weave, which is like a 30-mile-an-hour weave. You have to maintain 30 miles an hour. And the crazy thing is that your area for deviation is so small.
Yeah.
So they're shooting a radar gun at you the whole time that you're doing this. You have to maintain 1 mile an hour above or below 30 miles an hour whole time without using any brakes or hitting any cones on that 30-mile-an-hour weave. If you go to 28 and they hit you with it, it's a fail.
Wow.
If you go to 30, nobody goes over.
Right.
If you do, you're really making it harder. But you have that 1 mile an hour buffer, and that's all you get.
That's not much.
No, not at all. And you're making some pretty quick weaves. So you have to learn how to throw that bike down pretty quick and, back and forth. Then you have the 30 mile an hour decel. Sorry, the 40 mile an hour decel.
And what?
If I'm screwing this up, I'm sorry.
You're doing good. And they're big bikes.
Yeah, 1,000-pound Harleys.
Yeah, those are big bikes you're having to toss around.
Yeah, we're riding 1,000-pound Harley street glides.
That's amazing.
So you do the 40 mile an hour decel, which you get I don't know what the distance is, and I don't want to screw that up.
Yeah.
But you have to get up to 40 miles an hour, and then within this cone length, you have to decel without activating the anti-lock brakes.
Oh,
okay. So you can't activate ABS.
Yeah.
And then you have to make an immediate 90-degree left turn and then an immediate U-turn.
Oh, damn.
And again, you touch a cone, you're done. You put your foot down, you're done. And then you have another cone pattern. I cannot think of the name of it. But it's basically like this just awful set of cones that you have to go ridiculously slow through. And the other thing is, so on the decel, you can use your brake. It's the only pattern you can use your brake on.
Oh, okay.
All of the other patterns, if you use your brake, it's a fail. So it's extremely difficult, and it just taxes you mentally, physically a little bit, because everybody drops their bike about 300 times while you're training.
Oh, then picking that sucker back up.
You pick it up, you start getting pretty strong after that.
I would imagine.
But it was a great experience, and again, those guys would just reiterate, "Hey, you're gonna get it. You're gonna get it. We've seen people just like you make it through. You're gonna be fine." And I'm thinking to myself, "There's no way. There's no way." So the other thing I didn't mention is when you do these tested patterns, you get one opportunity to pass these things. You get 10 tries. But in those 10 tries, you have to get 3 in a row. It's not get 2, mess up, get 1. It's 3 in a row.
Okay.
So if you mess up, so if you get 2, you mess up 3, you're starting over, and that's now you're on attempt 4. So you get 10 attempts to get 3 in a row.
I wouldn't want them to make it too easy.
No,
I mean, that way, it's your life.
right? No, it's done that. It's done that way for a reason,
Sure.
and I hope they never change it. But so up until test day, which is Friday, I had yet to get the W 3 in a row.
Oh,
Hadn't done. I know, and I'd only done it 2 in a row a couple of times. And then test day comes around. They said, "Hey, are you ready to go?" And I said, "I mean, I'm as ready as I'm gonna be." And out of nowhere, the W just clicks, just like they said. Just like I'm like, these sons of bitches. Like they were right. Yeah. And from the right side, I think it took me 4 attempts.
Oh, wow.
Got 3 in a row. I think I messed up the first one. Got 3 in a row. From the left side, I think it took me 5 attempts. I think I got it. I messed up, and then I got 3 in a row. And I was like, what the heck? And then I didn't mess up anything else, any of the other patterns. And I was like completely shocked, but they're like, and they look at you like, now do you believe me?
Now you get it.
You get it? Like it clicks. It just happens. And I'm like, well, why did it have to wait till test day to click?
Right.
You know, like I'm a very confident guy. when it comes to testing and stuff, I like to think that I perform very well under pressure and under stress. And that's the only thing that I've ever done where I went home and I told my wife I might fail. I was like, I don't know that I'm going to pass this. And I don't like this feeling.
I bet she said something about not doubting you for a minute if I had.
She was more confident in my abilities than I was. She's like, you're going to be fine. Just go out there and just do your best.
Just
and
by
I'm
what
like,
you
that's
said
not what
about
I want to
her.
hear. You know,
Yeah,
that's
I
not
know.
what I want to hear.
But she knew.
She did. She's always been my biggest fan, which is one of her best qualities. Which might be detrimental to her. A bad person to cheer for. I do a lot of dumb stuff, but
That's our job as men. I
Yeah.
think. So it's their job to correct us.
But I remember she was my first call when I passed. I think just right after I passed the W, I hadn't even done the other events. I was like, I'm good. Once I passed those, I was so confident in the other ones.
Right.
I was like, I got this. And I called her. I was like super, super happy. And, and then we get to go on our rides, which was a blast.
Yeah.
We go to Pismo Beach, take a picture on the pier. I think we actually went to Calabasas, if I remember right.
Oh, that was on the.
Yeah, after your first week, once you pass all of the tested stations for all the cone patterns, they got to test you like high speeds and long rides. So every motor school goes to the beach.
Yeah.
Just some of them just differ on which beach they go to.
Sure.
You always go to LA to get fitted for your boots.
Oh. You got to have them fancy
You
boots, man.
Gotta
Come
have
on,
the nice boots.
those are.
I mean, if you don't have the boots, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And then you do like a mountain ride. We go to Kernville, stuff like that. Go through the canyon.
Yeah.
But that was such a blast. It was such a good experience. Unfortunately, it's what ended my career.
I was going to ask because it sounds like that's where things changed.
So I did that for, I don't remember how long I was in there, but I got hurt in November of 2022. And it sounds like when I tell people like I crashed a motorcycle, they immediately think I rolled it and flipped it 500 times. I'm like, it was the most uneventful. You can't even call it a crash. I dropped the bike. It was so uneventful. I was at our motor pad. I was training, and I dropped it. I felt a pop in my knee. And at first, I didn't think much of it, but then the pain started getting worse. Went and got checked out, and knee specialist here in town said, "Hey, you need surgery. I should have you back to work in about 6 weeks." I was like, "Cool, rock solid. Let's do it." So get the first surgery, and the first surgery was in July of 2023, July 13th actually. First surgery is July 13th. Get that surgery. I feel great after it. Like, I feel better than I did. I feel like I'm back in high school. Mm-hmm. Like, my knee feels so good. And he told me, hey, no real restrictions. Don't lift weight or anything like that, obviously. He goes, but I want you, as soon as you feel like you can walk on it, I want you to walk on it. We need to start getting it moving. I said, okay, cool. So, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 hours after surgery, I was walking.
Yeah.
Moving around, felt great. I felt great for probably, 2-3 weeks. And I woke up in the middle of the night one night, and my knee was the size of like a watermelon almost.
Oh, wow.
And it was super red.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, that's not good. I'm no doctor, but that's not good.
Yeah.
And so I went into his office without an appointment, just walked in and said, hey, I need to get seen. And he looked at it. He goes, I'm going to stick this needle in your leg. I can't give you anything to kill the pain or anything.
I'm going to drain it is what he's doing, huh?
Well, he goes, I want to see what the fluid looks like. If it's bloody, it's good. If it's cloudy, it's bad. And it was super cloudy. He goes, you got an infection. We got to do emergency surgery tomorrow. Damn. It's like, great. So I think it was July 27th, if I remember right, of 2023. I have surgery number 2. Now, mind you, I'm on antibiotics this whole time too.
Yeah.
Some oral ones. So I had my second surgery. I never really feel good after that one. Like I said, after that first surgery, I felt really good.
Right.
My knee felt great. I didn't have any pain. I felt phenomenal, and then woke up with that infection. I never had that after my second one.
Yeah.
The swelling never went down. It never felt good. It was always hurting. I think 3 weeks later, I got another infection. 2 or 3 weeks later, get another infection. And I go in and I said, hey, this is what's going on. He goes, I've been doing knees for 25 years. I've never seen anybody get 2 infections back to back. He goes, you have got the worst luck. It's like, thanks.
Yeah.
And so he goes, hey, we have to do surgery again. So that's surgery number 3. And I want to say that was August 3rd because I think it was my oldest daughter's birthday. So I have surgery number 3, August 3rd of 2023. And again, swelling never goes down. I never get good mobility. Pain never goes away.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what do I do? And so he says, well, hey, there's this other surgery. I wanted to do it in the beginning, but workers' comp wouldn't approve it, is what it is.
Right.
He goes, but we could probably do it now that we went through all these other steps. Thankfully, your knee's so jacked up now that now we can do it. But long story short, he does the surgery, and he goes, hey, it's not 100% that it's going to take. It's basically like, the way you explained it was like an organ transplant,
right?
But to your knee. It's a cartilage transplant
Sure.
surgery is what it is.
Yeah, whatever.
And he goes, if it takes, it takes. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Now it was my cartilage. They biopsied my cartilage, sent it to a lab, grew it.
Oh.
The problem is the area in my knee that it's at is it's like right where your knee does like the shearing, the joint.
Okay.
So he's like, if it takes, it'll probably be great. If it doesn't, who knows? And mine didn't take.
Sure.
So that surgery, that fourth surgery was in April. I think it was April 13th of 2024. Yeah, April 13th of 2024. Again, never really felt good after that. My knee still is jacked up. I still can't really run. If I do anything active, I'm pretty much down for a day or two now. I try to still go out and play catch with my kids. I try and coach their teams if I can. I do as much as I can with the limited mobility and range of motion that I have. I'm not going to let it stop me from doing everything because I'm still going to be a dad. I'll just deal with the pain. The pain is brutal, but I think the pain of like missing time with my kids would be way worse when I'm older. So I would rather deal with the physical pain now than like the mental pain, 20 and 30 years from now.
When we met a few months ago, I guess, you told me some of the stories. You told me, and your beliefs off the military. What really impressed me and what I really wanted to get you on about, what really is the fact you told me about your kids. And listening to you talk about your kids and talk about going to the games and the way that you were able to have the full career, but you were able to balance everything. Quite honestly, impressive as hell. It's a lot of guys can't do it. And I was so impressed with listening to you talk that day. I'm like, that guy's got to come on because you're an inspiration to other people. You may not think about it, you may not realize it, but you are.
If I am, well, that's awesome. I take that very seriously, and I'm very humbled to hear somebody even mention that. So I appreciate that. I think that our greatest calling as men and women is to be parents. Like, I don't think there's a greater calling than being a dad or a mom.
Yeah.
I think it's what we're here to do. I talked to my wife about this, and we've talked for years about this. Like what really is your purpose if you decide not to have kids? Now, no knock on people that decide not to have kids. But like, what's your purpose? Like, you're at the end of your life, it's just like that's it.
And you're not fulfilling. In my opinion, like I said, you do have a little bit of a duty to replace you got to have a couple kids to replace the two that you are.
Yeah.
We are running into that problem in the U.S. to where we're in a declining society.
Yeah, and the other thing is that like we need more good humans.
Yes.
There's plenty of humans out there, and there's plenty of bad ones, and we need to keep putting good ones out there. Like, that's a responsibility as like good people. And I'd like to think that of myself as a pretty good guy. I've made a lot of mistakes, and I'm going to continue to do that. But I'd like to think that like I do a pretty good job as a dad. Now, it is the most important thing to me. I love my kids more than anything on planet Earth. I've got 5 awesome kids. I've got an 18-year-old daughter who's a cheerleader at Bakersfield College. She works a couple jobs. She helps with the other kids. I've got 3 young boys that are 13, 11, and 8. And then I've got my little princess who's going to be 2 years old in, just a few days now.
Oh, wow.
Well, week and a half, what is it, 23rd? So June 2nd.
Okay. All right.
They are everything to me. Mm-hmm. Like every waking moment, I'm thinking of like, how can we do things for them? I always want to be involved with every aspect of their life. And while it was really hard for me to do that when I was a police officer, I still did my very best. Yeah. Thankfully, like I said, I had great bosses like Chris, who allowed me like, hey, go home. It's your kid's birthday.
Yeah.
Go hang out for the party and then come back to work. or just letting us be able to be parents and to be there for those like really important times. And now that I'm retired, I try to never miss anything. Like if it's an awards assembly and he's getting some award that he's gotten 50 times, like he's going to be on honor roll, I'm going to be there. I want to see it the 50th time. I want to see it the 51st time. And I'm going to congratulate him and tell him how proud I am every single time, because he deserves to hear that. It's going to make him want to keep pushing and want to keep getting better. And I think that's our duty as fathers, is to like constantly push our, especially sons, push them to always try to be the best version of themselves and to never be satisfied with where they're at. Always have a goal, and always make your goal like what I tell my kids is I want my goal to be so unattainable that I never stop going after it. So my goal, I want it to be some outrageous thing that like I'll probably never achieve, like perfection. Right. I want my goal to be perfection in every aspect of life. I know I'm not going to achieve it,
right?
But the constant pursuit is what makes me good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Imagine this. You defend yourself or a loved one, and instead of being seen as the good guy, you're arrested, charged, and forced to fight for your freedom. You know you did nothing wrong, but now you're looking at thousands in legal fees. We've seen it happen. Good people losing everything just to prove they acted lawfully. That's why you need firearms legal protection. For just 33 cents a day, FLP gives you unlimited legal defense for criminal and civil cases. No caps, no hidden fees, no payback, just real protection with experienced self-defense attorneys who have your back. Plus, you'll get 24/7 attorney access, red flag protection, and more. Go to firearmslegal.com, pick your plan, and use promo code ECA for exclusive pricing, no setup fee, and a lifetime rate lock. Because when the worst day of your life happens, you shouldn't face it alone.
You know my son, and I have 2 daughters, and there's obvious things I could have done better at times, but it was just, you do what you can. You do the best you can with it. That's even my daughter's got me a coffee cup years ago, and it says something about Happy Father's Day, Dad. Thanks for making us something about making it. You're the best father, best dad ever, or something. But it was about raising us to be the sons, even though we're your daughters. Because I raised them with animals. I raised them around. I wasn't gentle on them.
Yeah,
and they're both tough as hell. And so is he. That's it. My son's the same. I was never gentle.
I don't think you can be in today's society and expect them to be successful. You have to be tough on kids because life is not easy. Life is going to be tough. Life is going to beat you up and spit you out, and you got to be ready for it. Yeah. And if you're not, it's going to be a kick in the nuts. So I'm very tough. I like to tell my wife and my kids, like, I'm the hammer in the house.
Right.
My wife is the most gentle, kind, nurturing human being on planet Earth. And she can be pretty feisty sometimes, but she is a mom through and through, kind, loving, warm, gentle, and I am not.
You were raising some warriors by the sound of it when we were talking last time.
My dad was an old school Vietnam vet that was like, men don't show emotion. Like the first time he told me he loved me was when I got orders for Iraq, and he told me that, and I was like, am I gonna die? Like, is this why he's telling me this? Like,
we might have that conversation a couple times. It's different in our generation.
Yeah, I'm very similar. Now, I won't say that I reserve those 3 words for my kids until they leave for the military, but I'm tough on them. And at times I'm sure they question it and they think, man, does Dad even like me? And I don't think they'll understand it for, 20 years until they get older and they have kids and they understand, like, that's why he did it,
Well, the old saying, the older they get, the smarter you get, right?
Yeah.
That'll happen.
And man, gosh, if I had 10 minutes with my old man, like, he passed away 10 years ago. And it wasn't until after he passed that I started to realize, because my kids started to get a little bit older at the time. So when he passed, my oldest boy was 2. My middle son was just a baby. My 2 younger ones hadn't been born yet. So I was still new to the parenting thing. My daughter was, she was, 6, I think. But I was still real new to the parenting thing. And, I just never appreciated all the like wisdom he had imparted on me. And all of the stuff he had done over the years, and it wasn't until probably shortly after he passed that I started to realize like that guy was right about like everything.
Oh, it clicked.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate. I wish I would have experienced it or thought about that sooner, because I could have had some better conversations with him, and probably could have picked his brain a little bit, because as he got older, he did get a little softer, especially with grandkids. Like, he was a freaking pushover with my kids.
Hey, when it comes down to it, it's kids are great. Grandkids are awesome.
Yeah.
I got 3 grandkids. I'm very fortunate. And yeah, they'll tell you I'm a little easier on the grandkids. And
I'm sure a little is probably an understatement.
It might be.
Or an gigantic.
Yeah, it might be. It's, but it's just, like I said, grandkids, it's just something about having them grandkids and granddaughters come over.
Oh yeah.
It doesn't matter what they want. It's going to happen.
But I've even softened up over just like the course of parenting my kids, because I have 5 kids. So
yeah,
I have an 18-year-old and I have a daughter who's going to be 2. My parenting style for my 18-year-old and for my 13-year-old son, completely different than like my 8-year-old son and my almost 2-year-old daughter. Like, I was tough. Mm-hmm. Honestly, I'll say that I probably wasn't even ready to be a parent, and maybe nobody is, but I definitely wasn't. I was probably a little rough around the edges. I was probably harder on him than I needed to be at times. I never did it out of like malice or anything like that. It was obviously out of love, but I just didn't know what I was doing.
None of us do.
And so I was trying to navigate this world of like being a dad, and at the time a stepdad. She's not my stepdaughter, like she's my daughter.
Right.
But at the time, that was kind of my role as a stepdad, because
that's a tough one.
I was new. Hardest job.
Yes.
By far. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy.
Yeah.
It's a tough role, but if you stick it out, it's worth it.
Yeah.
And, she's 18. She's a great young woman, and she's going to do big things. I probably wasn't the greatest of dads with her, and that was just me trying to figure myself out. And at the time, I was dealing with some stuff. I'd gotten out of the military not long before that. I was dealing with I didn't really want to get out, so I was kind of mad at the world, kind of mad at myself.
Yeah.
I just got divorced a year or 2 before that from a previous marriage, and so I had a lot of stuff going on mentally that I wasn't in a good headspace. So, all those things together wasn't exactly a recipe for being a great dad. And then get thrown into, here's a 4-year-old girl.
Yeah, by the way.
Figure it out. It was tough. It was tough, man. I made some good decisions and I made some bad ones. And, I hope that as she gets older, she realizes that nothing was done out of malice or anything. It was I was just trying to figure things out.
I would imagine as they get older, she probably sees it now, but she's not going to tell you now, not at 18. She's going to bust you a little bit. It's a little payback time.
I would expect that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, one of the things that came up when we were talking to Bobby and Ted was how great you are with young folks. Because one of the things he was, I think it was Ted who was talking, when they do CCW training also, which you of course do with your classes and your company. He said when they get young people for any firearms training, they send them to you.
Yeah.
Which I think speaks volumes for you. Because he just said you have this patience about you. Well, and that's an old supervisor. That's pretty good.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I got a soft spot for kids. I have 5 kids and love them to death. And I think that they're our next generation. They're the next generation of police officers, next generation of military, firefighters, doctors, everything. And they deserve to be, given the same level of training and the same opportunities as everybody else. And I just didn't, that was an area that I saw was lacking. So I guess I could transition to me starting my company.
Yeah, exactly.
A little bit.
I understand. You started a lot because you were training women.
Yeah. So what I ended up doing, this was during the riots, the George Floyd stuff had all popped off, and we had kind of had our stuff here in Bakersfield. What ended up happening is I saw a Facebook post by one of those Antifa groups, and it basically said, we're going to, find out where officers live, and we're going to follow them, and when they go to work, we're going to attack their families. And I was like, no.
No, you're not. Yeah.
And so I talked to my wife. I said, get me all the SWAT wives together. I'm going to teach you guys some hand-to-hand stuff, just some little basic self-defense stuff, and some firearm stuff. That's how it all started. was like, and I had been talking about starting a firearms training company for years, and my wife always, yeah, you should do it. And I would always be like, nah, it's not the right time. It's not the right time. And so this was the catalyst. So I saw that post and I said, get some friends together. So she got 5 or 6 girls together. I taught this class for, I don't know, 3-4 hours, whatever it was. And they loved it. And I'm a very open guy, very thick-skinned dude. Like, I love when people tell me that I screw up because it's an opportunity for me to get better.
Yeah.
I'm not the guy that gets upset when you say that I screwed up. I'm like, okay, well, how did I screw up? Where did I screw up and how can I get better?
Right.
So, one of the great things that I learned from the military is doing AARs or after action reports. Basically, hey, give me 3 goods, 3 bads, and 3 things. What can I add to make this even better? And so I did that with all my classes. I started off with that first one, and they gave me some points. I said, okay, cool. Like, I'll consider that, and I'll see what I can do. Well, the next week, I got hit up by some more ladies that were like, hey, well, we want to get some training too, some other police wives. I said, okay, well, let's put a class together. So I got a class of 10 ladies. The first one was like 5 or 6. Second class was like 10. And in that second class, and they were all police wives as well. So that was my initial goal, was to teach police wives, like, just to prepare them just in case something happened.
Well, and I'm sure any husband out there or wife, probably even more so listening to this, will understand. All your buddies, all your coworkers, they're all used to firearms, but they're not going to go train their wives because realistically, you don't train your.
No,
that's not. Yeah, it's not going to end well.
I'll even. So I'd like to think of myself as a pretty dang good firearms instructor. I didn't teach my wife.
Yeah.
My first class, my wife was in it. My good friend Danny he's also a good firearms instructor. His wife was in it. I said, you train my wife, I'll train yours.
That's pretty smart.
I was like, I don't want any part of that evil. You don't want any part of this evil, like, because we know what'll end up happening. There'll be some fights going on by the end of this class. And so it worked out great. And now that I think my wife's seen me teach enough, like, she's like, okay, you could teach me. But
that's a fact, though. You can't.
It's a bad idea initially.
Yeah.
So I taught a couple classes, and then I think it was the second, maybe third class, one of the ladies said, hey, I have a friend who saw your Instagram post and is like really interested in taking this class. Would you let non-police wives take this class? Or non-police, just women?
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, why not?
Sure.
And so I kind of opened it up, and I was teaching classes every week for a year, and they were full.
Wow.
All women.
Yeah.
Because I thought about it, and I was like, wow, they're really neglected in this space. It's always been such a masculine type hobby or profession that women kind of get overlooked and neglected. So that's why I initially started, I was training women, and I did that for the first year. Didn't teach a single guy. And then I had some guys reach out to me on Instagram and say, hey, what's up, man? Like, I want to learn how to shoot. So I said, okay, I'll open up like a co-ed class, or maybe I did a guy's class first. I don't remember. But I did that, and I've kind of opened it up to anybody since then. And it's been great. But yeah, so on top of that, I started doing kids classes, because again, another space where I felt like this particular group of people were neglected in the training community. So
it's intimidating, I would imagine, for a lot of people to think about training kids. I mean, liability, take your pick.
For sure.
But at the same time, so I think it's impressive that you could, and it's a neglected area.
100%. The thing that people are most afraid of is the liability.
Sure.
And absolutely, if it's done improperly, there is a ton of liability.
Yeah.
If you teach them the right way and you explain it the right way, they're no different than adults.
Yeah.
I've got a 13-year-old son that at 10 years old could pass our police qualification.
Yeah.
And it's not an easy qual.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of officers struggle with it.
I've heard some stories about that.
And at 10 years old, I had him passing it. Why? Because I trained him the right way. And if you just teach him the importance of it, you teach him how to understand that firearms in untrained hands are extremely dangerous. Mm-hmm. Firearms in trained hands, not all that dangerous.
Well, and I think at that point, if you could get them young enough, they haven't learned the bad habits.
Exactly.
Going and trying to teach somebody, I think back to when I first started shooting, I wasn't raised around guns at all. And actually, the first gun I ever purchased was because of a LA County sheriff. we owned a grocery store. We were in Lancaster, and we had an incident at the store. And one of the deputies came in, and we were watching the camera, and he's looking, and he goes, "Yeah, they were here to rob you." He goes, "When did you put the cameras in?" I said, "Last week." He goes, "Yeah, that's why they were here." And he went through the whole thing. It was really obvious when you looked at it. And finally he looked at me and he goes, "You carry a gun?" I go, "No, I've thought about it." He goes, "You should carry a gun." Lancaster's a rough place.
Oh, yeah.
That was probably one of the roughest places. But he's like, "Oh, you should carry a gun."
Yeah, I grew up the same way. I didn't shoot a gun. I had a BB gun when I was a kid, but like I didn't shoot an actual firearm until I went to basic training.
Yeah.
My dad was super against them. He was a Vietnam vet and was like super against guns after that. Just didn't want them in around the house and stuff. And so it wasn't anything that I was raised around, so I didn't grow up on them. You know, I went to basic training, shot rifles. I didn't really ever shoot pistols in the military. I think maybe a handful of times. But it wasn't until I got into the police department that I developed like a passion for pistols and maybe an unhealthy obsession. Because what ended up happening was like I got to this point where I wanted to be the best pistol shooter in the department.
Kind of sensing a theme.
Yeah. Again, I'm never satisfied. Like I want to be the best at things. Like because I always look at it like, why do something if you're not going to try to be the best at it?
Sure.
To me, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense, especially in the profession that I was in. Like, why wouldn't I want to be the absolute best with the one tool on my belt that can save my life or somebody else's life? Yeah. Now, there's a lot of other tools on my belt that I could use, and I thankfully, never had to use my pistol in the line of duty.
And most officers don't.
Yeah. I pulled it out several times, never once had to discharge it. However, I don't want to not train for the unlikely scenario. I want to be the best in the unlikely scenario. Mm-hmm. You know, like, so the way I would explain it is like, if I have to take the shot of my life, I want to be able to do it 100 out of 100. Right. I don't want to hope or rely on hope as a tactic.
Hope's not a plan, right? Hope's not a tactic.
So I train constantly. But it wasn't just guns. It was physical fitness. I lifted constantly. I was doing cardio to stay in shape. I was, always trying to think of ways to get better. On the SWAT team, we were doing a lot of defensive tactics and like jiu-jitsu stuff and wrestling stuff. We would do boxing at times just to constantly get better at our craft, because you never know which tool you're going to have to use. You don't know if you're going to have to use hand-to-hand combat. You don't know if you're going to have to use some sort of like takedown. You don't know if it's some strange handcuffing technique, or you're going to be rolling around on the ground, or you don't know if it's going to go to guns. You don't know what you're going to have to do. So you train for everything. And are they unlikely scenarios? Absolutely. But do I want to do that unlikely scenario the first time when it happens?
Oh, yeah.
No.
Well, you want to be ready.
So
how would you feel about I'm not a jiu-jitsu guy. I love watching it. I'm fascinated by it. I wish I would have done it when I was younger. It hurts a lot more now. But making that a requirement of law enforcement, you get into law enforcement, it seems like that would de-escalate in some ways, because you're going to do hands-on more than you're going to do, like you said, pull your firearm.
Absolutely.
Should that be some type of requirement in the academy? How would you feel about that?
I don't know if you want to make jiu-jitsu necessarily a requirement, but I think there's got to be something. Now we have a standard for defensive tactics, and every recruit that goes through police academy has to pass our standards for defensive tactics.
Sure.
But basically what it is handcuffing techniques. It's getting used to taking a punch, because you never know when that's going to happen.
Right.
You get pepper sprayed, you get tased. Because I've been tased on duty by my partner. He's actually my FTO, Santos. I got pepper sprayed by one of my partners, just not purposefully, but like pepper sprayed the guy, and then we ended up having to try to take him down. Pepper spray got on me, and now I'm pepper sprayed.
My son could tell you some stories about getting pepper sprayed. He had a good time with that.
It's one of those things that like you have to have that in the academy. You have to experience the stuff that you're about to deal with all the time. So hand-to-hand stuff has to be in there. There has to be some level of defensive tactics in every police academy. If there's not, they're doing their recruits a very big disservice, and they're preparing them to fail. That's all.
I've always just felt if again, like I said, I've never been in law enforcement, so I don't ever speak like I have been. I just looking at it, I would think that if I'm in that field for my own safety, I would want to stay up on it and do it on a regular basis. Yeah. Now, like I said, that's from outside looking in. You guys have work a lot as it is. But it just seems like I would want to have every tool, like I said, have every tool in the toolbox.
I agree. I think some of the big things that need to be implemented in every police academy is high stress. High stress has to be at the utmost importance. Our job is an extremely high stress job.
Yeah.
Every day. You never know. Like, because you're going to go to those priority 1 calls that get the hair on the back of your neck standing up pretty much daily.
Right.
Very few days, especially if you're on weekends and you're working, the bad side of town, very few days will you have one of those days where you're like, man, it was really chill today. No, like every day you're going to have that adrenaline dump for, one thing or another. Maybe an officer's in need of help and he calls out 148. Like, that's one of the things that, like, you're like, I'm gone.
Right.
I'm breaking every law, every traffic law known to man to get there to make sure that my partner is safe. So I think high stress has got to be implemented in an academy.
Yeah.
And like, it should be almost the entire time because it produces a better product. Now, that may be my opinion and people in high spots may disagree with me, but I that's just my perspective from my 13 years in.
Yeah, exactly. As we get more and more into that, and we see that you are developing these classes for civilians and developing, training for these folks to get them more comfortable. What's recommendations, what suggestions, and the name of your company. Go through that a little bit.
Yeah, so name of my company is Jeffries Firearms Training. Super basic. I'm not a very creative guy when it comes to that. So
Put a lot of thought into
that was
that
about
one.
as simple as it could be and straight to the point. On Instagram, I'm JFT_actual. Same thing on TikTok if you're looking for any training. So the things that I'm really trying to hammer home with people is the main one is just to train. Like, put your hands on your guns more than the once every 2 years that you come and you requalify with your CCW. And, I tell people all the time, like, you are your own first responder. You're going to be the one to deal with your crisis first. The SWAT team's not going to be there. It's going to be some patrolman who probably doesn't train all that often. So, like, you are going to be your biggest ally in that moment.
And they're 10 minutes out. You call 911.
Depending on where you're at.
I mean, realistically, I think even what did Bobby say? A 911 call, 5 minutes out on a level 1 call.
Yeah.
You've got a lot can happen in 5 minutes.
If somebody's really dedicated, you could be dead in 5 minutes. You can be dead in 5 seconds.
Right.
So the idea is to train people the right way. Train people to be fast and accurate. Unfortunately, over the years in law enforcement and even in the military, the like mantra was like, oh, slowly pull the trigger to the rear, line your sights up, close one eye, all this stuff, all these like cool buzzwords and terms, and they couldn't be farther from the truth. Like, you need to be able to shoot fast and accurate. You need to be able to get, honestly, most gunfights, they say statistically happen within 3 yards.
Right.
9 feet roughly. At that distance, skill is doesn't really come into play. It's who gets the gun out faster.
Yeah.
Who gets the first shots off. That's really who wins that. And so I teach people to train at speed. I want you to be able to get the gun out in less than 1 second, wherever it's at. The other thing is I tell people, like, I'm not going to pull my gun out as a scare tactic. If I pull my gun out, I'm more than likely it's for a purpose, probably to use it. It's not a tool to scare people.
No.
It's not something fun just to show off. You take that out in the event that your life is in imminent danger or somebody else's,
I'd rather nobody sees that I'm carrying
100%.
one, quite honestly.
100%.
And they don't need to know that. It's, for one thing, it scares some folks. They shouldn't, but it does. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, if something is happening, you're the first target because you're going to take out the threat.
But I tell people all the time, like, your gun is like the last resort.
Absolutely.
Like, you should, one, if you can, be a good witness. If your life and the life of anybody else isn't in immediate danger, just be a good witness.
Yeah.
And if something's happening directly to you, learn how to create space. If somebody's trying to challenge you to a fight, swallow your ego.
Yes.
Swallow your pride. Let them talk badly about you and tell you how stupid you are and how ugly you are, whatever, and just walk away.
One of the baddest men on the planet, Jocko, talks about that. And he's older now, but he talks about it. He goes, My best defense is my feet. I'm
Just
going the
get
other
out of
way.
there.
I'm getting the hell out of there.
You know, and in the event somebody's trying to grab you, like understand how to create space.
Yeah.
Whether that's by using some technique you learned in, you know, judo or
Whatever,
jiu-jitsu or boxing or kickboxing, whatever it is. Like whatever your discipline is that you want to learn, like for one, be proficient in it. Don't always think that you have to go straight to a gun. But it's with anything, it's just train. Like I get so many people that do these Kern County CCWs and they say, and I'm like, how often do you shoot? And they're like, oh, not very. And I'm like, that's a bad answer. You know, I shoot all the time.
Right.
And I'm like, I'm an instructor here. And I'd like to think that I'm one of the better ones. And I don't mean, I'm not taking a hit on anybody. That's just I always think I'm always a very confident guy. I still take classes. Yeah. I still go to trainings. Why? Because I can get better. There are better shooters out there than me, and I want to find them, and I want to train with them. And I just got done. I took a class, I think a month ago, maybe 2 months ago. It was a concealed shooting class, and I love the guy. He's a good friend of mine. He's the only grandmaster pistol shooter to do it from concealment. His name's Donovan Moore from Point One Tactics. A little shout out.
Oh, absolutely.
Phenomenal shooter. Great instructor. I take classes with him. Why? Because I want to get better. I can still get better. I'm a good shooter. I'm not great, and I want to get there.
Yeah, that's your name has come up a lot when it comes to instruction and different people. That, like I said, we know a lot of the same people. Yeah. Your name always comes up as one of the best trainers around. So I would highly recommend anybody that wants to be trained to call you.
I appreciate it, but you know, and I do private lessons. That's kind of like probably the biggest thing that I do now is like people want to do private lessons. They like the one-on-one.
Yeah, and
I recommend it because I can do a lot of work with somebody, you know, in 3 or 4 hours. You know, we do a few of those sessions. We can get somebody pretty dialed in, you know, and I have clients that I've been working with for 2 years.
Yeah.
And some of the guys that compete now, they're phenomenal shooters, you know, and they're but they have the same mentality as like the constant strive for perfection, the constant strive for greatness. Knowing I'm never going to get there, but
where do you do your training at?
So I have a couple different places that I use. I use Five Dogs shooting range. I'm one of the guys that goes out there. I also have a private range that I use that's out towards Glenville.
Yep. Okay.
We're getting that up and running here pretty quick. It's called the Tactical Edge Complex, and so we're going to be doing a lot of stuff out there. Do, like I said, classes.
Yeah. I need to have my wife go through some classes with you. She's got into damn Naomi. I always blame her for this. She's the one that got my wife into competition shooting. So
Naomi's great. I love Naomi.
Me too. But damn, she's costing me money.
I will say, so like, I think Naomi's the only other instructor I recommend to people.
Yeah, she's
a good shooter. She's a very good shooter. I've competed with her.
Yeah,
she's good at what she does. And
she straightened me out. I was very guilty of the not shooting enough. Busy with work.
Most people,
every excuse, whatever it was, none of them were good enough, and I wasn't shooting enough. And we went out there, and within one magazine, she had me straightened out.
It doesn't take long. Now, you know, it's one of those things that it's an edge that constantly needs to be sharpened.
Yes.
You know, so shooting isn't one of those things where, you know, it's one and done. Like, oh, I did 4 hours of training, I'm good to go. No. The best shooters in the world shoot thousands of rounds a week. You know, like another guy that I'm training with later on this year is JJ Rakaza. He is a world champion pistol shooter. Phenomenal. Like, arguably one of the best, if not the best shooter in the world.
Wow.
You know, and I'm going to go train with him at the end of this year. I'm super pumped for that. It took me like 2 years to get into his class.
Oh.
Because I sell out in like 5 minutes.
Right.
But I'm going to go take a class with him, and I can't wait to see like what kind of nuggets of instruction that I can pick up from him. And like, you know, like I'm going to learn a lot of cool techniques on how to shoot better myself. But like the things that I really love taking away from these other instructors that I respect and take classes with is like instructional advice.
Yeah.
So the way they instruct, I think, oh, I like the way he explained that. That makes a lot of sense. I'm gonna take that. Now I always give him credit.
Oh, sure.
You know, when I say something in one of my classes and I'm like, you know, or I do a drill, I say, oh, hey, just so you guys know, I stole this from my buddy Donovan.
Absolutely.
You know, and then I always recommend him. Like I tell people like there's plenty of pie out there for everybody to have a slice. Oh. Like I'm not the end all be all.
There's 12,000 CCW issued in or 16,000 in Kern County. There's a lot of people that need some training.
Yeah, and so I'm like,
enough.
I'd like to think of myself as a good trainer here in Kern County, but there's other guys that you can go and you can learn other stuff from, and I highly recommend people to go take training from other people because you just get better that way.
Well, move around. You're going to learn a little bit from everybody.
100%. Everybody has different styles of instruction.
Sure.
Different drills that they like to include in their teaching and their classes, and you just get better. Like the only downside is you get better.
So tell us about the dad's class. That was, you showed me a video. That was awesome. How did that come about? The dad's class was cool.
So I always loved looking at those stereotypical dads, and there's a lot of memes that would fly around like Instagram and TikTok and stuff like that. And I thought they were hilarious. And I told my wife one day, I said, how funny would it be if I got a bunch of dudes together and I taught a dads only class and we all had to dress like that. Like there was a dress code. And she was on board right away. She goes, you should absolutely do that. That would be hilarious. And I'd be like, I don't think it's be that good. I don't think people are going to buy in. I don't think people are going to like it. Well, long story short, I taught the class, recorded some footage on an iPhone, put it together in some little video editing app on my iPhone, and put it on my TikTok, and it went viral. I think it's at 7 or 8 million views, and then the other videos got hundreds of thousands of views, and shares and all that stuff. And I mean I had people recognize me at SHOT Show when I went the following year after that. So this was, I think I taught my first one in, I think it was 2021, maybe 2022. Well, it had to have been before my surgery.
Oh.
Yeah, so it was 2021, I think. 2020 or 2021 was my first one. And I went to SHOT Show the following year. And I had guys recognize me. They're like, "Oh, you're that dad guy."
You're the
yeah, I guess. I mean, I guess that's what I'm famous
That's
for.
who you are now.
And so it was kind of cool. So it was just kind of like the thing that I just took on as my deal. But I thought it was going to be funny. So, I had stereotypical dad stuff. You had to wear the white Nikes or the white New Balances. And you had to wear calf length socks and, khaki shorts or jean shorts or cargo shorts.
It was awesome.
Tucked in shirt with a belt on. And, you had to wear dad glasses. And then we had some dad scenarios you had to do. You had to load batteries into a remote, and you had to click the tongs on a, grill and push a lawnmower while you shoot, and we were kind of heckling them as they did it. And it made it fun. But now, while that was a lot of fun, and it was, kind of satire for the class.
Sure.
There was actually the first 3 hours of the class was a legitimate class, where we were going through fundamentals, we were doing drills. And I didn't show any of that because that's not what people want to see. But yeah, the first 3 hours of the class were legitimate training, followed by an hour of fun.
I saw you the first time on the range, actually. I think it was around Valentine's, and you did the Valentine's Day one. So you like having some themes, it seems like.
Yeah, again, wife's idea. I mentioned a Valentine's Day class, and she goes, "I think that's a great idea." Again, she's my biggest fan.
Kind of another
sometimes
theme going on there, isn't it?
Yeah, I should probably listen to her more.
Yeah.
Hope that doesn't go on the air.
Yeah.
But
we might cut that, but
yeah.
Probably not.
She said, "I think it's a great idea." And I was like, no couples are going to want to come spend Valentine's Day with me on a range, And she goes, "Just do it." And so I think I did my first one in maybe 2020, sold out right away. Within, I think, 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Sold out. And it's been sold out every year since. I have returning couples that come to every class. And they're like, "Save my spot next year. Save my spot next year."
Well, the day I saw you, there was probably at least 7, 8 couples, it seemed like, wasn't it? 10 couples?
Yeah, I think about 10 couples every class. I think my least amount was 8 because we had one couple back out last minute. But I have it catered. So you're not going to see a whole lot of instructors cater their classes.
No, I thought that was pretty cool.
So I hire guys that come out and cater the event. We have prizes for the top couple. Mm-hmm. So, you'll compete against your wife, and then you and your wife compete against other couples. And it's funny how it gets heated because sometimes the wives are out shooting the husbands, and they're looking at their husbands like, do I have to carry this team? Are you going to do anything?
My wife would outshoot me every time.
And it's so fun, but they have a blast. And, we do a questionnaire to where you can get extra points that'll help you in the competition. One of the questions for the guys was who scored 4 touchdowns in one game for Polk High, and if you don't know Al Bundy and you didn't watch Married with Children
That's
back
right,
in the day,
yes.
some just stereotypical dude questions, and so things like that can help score some points for the team. But It's a blast, and those theme classes have probably been my best classes.
Yeah.
Again, it's training. It's not just like, oh, come out here and we're gonna have a bunch of fun. It's legitimate training, but it makes it fun, and it makes it not just training but an experience.
I think it makes it stick a little more.
Yeah,
because they're going to remember that a little.
And people love it. Like, I think they like the idea of, I'm not just coming out and going to shoot a bunch of bullets, but I'm going to come out and I'm going to come out with my husband.
Yeah.
We're going to spend some time together. We're going to have some fun. We're going to do a little competing. And hey, we might win. So, like, prizes are like a bottle of whiskey and a bottle of wine.
Sure.
Dinner for two at Hungry Hunter. Like some cool prizes. And they're spending time together, having fun, and developing good skills.
Yes.
Developing good potential life-saving skills.
We might have to come out and take that course sometime. I'll get my wife out there. Like I said, she would definitely carry the team. She's much better than I am.
You're welcome to come.
So I alluded to it when we started. Mm-hmm. I got to give you a little bit of a hard time because I heard a little bit on the other podcast. Your 30-year anniversary is coming up.
Yeah.
Is that already passed?
I'd have to look at that paperwork again. I don't think it's passed quite yet. My 30-year of being off probation. I got in some trouble when I was a youngster. I was 9 years old and hanging out with some older kids. They decided they wanted to go into an apartment complex. And so I'll tell this whole story, actually, because this is kind of a funny story. And I don't think I haven't told it, obviously, on a podcast. But so parents got divorced. My mom lived in an apartment complex. And, I had to go over there every other weekend or whatever it was. And I ended up hanging out with this group of kids. And we thought we were super cool. They were all about 15, 16. I was like 8 or 9 at the time. And we all thought we were really cool. Well, they find out that I can pick locks. And I just learned how to do that just because I just like tinkering with stuff. Learned how to pick locks. And they said, well, hey, could you pick a door lock? And I'm like, yeah, I'm sure I could. They're like, you should pick a lock on an apartment door. And I'm like, I don't know if that's a good idea. I'm sure they just, wore me down over time. And long story short, I ended up doing it. They went in and did what they did. They took some stuff. I don't think anything of ever really any value. They'd give me like $5.
Yeah.
And
9, that's good money.
Yeah, $5. And, mind you, this is in what, like 95? $5, I was living like a king for a couple days.
Oh, yeah.
I was getting candy bars and sodas from the little gas station and getting the like $1. At the time, you get 2 green chili burritos for $1 at the time. Those things were awesome. Gas station burritos that's what I lived on.
There was a thing about those.
They were so good. And that salsa was next level. But, so they give me like $5 and I was king for a day. Well, long story short, we get caught. By we, not me. One of the other guys got caught. And he told on the rest of us. But
they rat out the 9-year-old.
Ratted out the 9-year-old.
Wow.
But it all worked out, which was kind of funny. And so, like, to go back to like how tough of a parent my dad was, the officer that showed up, I don't remember his name. I mean, he's really big. Now I was 9, so maybe he was just an average sized guy. But he showed up, and I remember I was crying, and he's like, "Why are you crying?" He's like, "Are you crying because you're gonna come down to the police station with me?" And I was like, "Nope." And he goes, "Well, why are you crying?" I said, "Because I know you just called my dad." And sure enough, my dad showed up. My dad was he was a large human being. He is 6'2", 300 pounds, and a very intimidating dude, at least to me. And my dad was still alive. I still wouldn't fight him. But my dad showed up, and he asked the officer. He goes, "Do you mind if I ride with you guys?" And the officer goes, "No, not at all."
Oh.
And then he asked the officer. He goes, "Hey, do you mind stopping by my house before you take him down to the station?" And the officer looks at my dad and he goes, "Why?" He goes, "Because I'm going to kick the shit out of him before you take him to jail."
Very different time.
Different time.
Very different time.
But 100% warranted, and just like I needed it. Took me home.
Just whipped your ass, didn't he?
Whipped the shit out of me. Quite literally. It was brutal. But again, I deserved it. And I learned from it.
Yeah.
After that, experience dealing with that for 6 months. I told myself I'll never get in trouble again with the law. I was like, it was the best experience. It was the best thing that could have happened to me at the time.
Sure. Yeah.
And oddly enough, so what ends up happening about this whole thing? So I get in trouble. I get on probation for a little while. I have to spend some time in a facility. But the best part about it was, I shouldn't say the best part. The funny part is I get banned from my mom's apartment, so I can't go see my mom anymore. right? So the other kids who lived in those apartment complexes, I think their families got kicked out. So they actually had to move out because of all this that had happened, Thankfully, they didn't kick my mom out. And about 6 months later, my mom calls me. She goes, "Hey, you need to come to the apartments." I was like, "I can't come to the apartments." And she goes, now this is like a Saturday or a Sunday or something like that, on a day where like most businesses are closed. She goes, "Hey, you need to come down to the apartments." I was like, "I can't. They won't let me." She goes, No, the manager's asking for you. I said, "Why?" She goes, "A lady locked herself out and needs to get back into her apartment.
You need me."
Yeah. And so I was like, oh, this is kind of funny. Like, oh, how the turntables,
Yeah.
And
Okay, but let me come back and see my mom.
So that was the arrangement that ended up happening. Was they lifted the ban on me from the apartments if I got in, and I was in her apartment in like 10 seconds.
You're the official locksmith now.
Yeah. It was pretty
awesome.
funny how it came full circle, but yeah, so that's the story how I ended up on probation.
I caught a bit of it, and I'm like, oh, I can't let that go without asking, because that's just one of those cool stories.
Yeah, and so now, like, my boys can be knuckleheads at times, but I look back and I'm like, they are so much better than I ever was, and so like I look at like all the times my dad like whipped me or whatever, and like it was never unjustified. It was always to prove a point and to teach a lesson. And so like I'm grateful that he was as tough as he was, because had he not been, I wouldn't have been as prepared as I was for life.
Well, you probably wouldn't have got into the military because you would have been in more trouble.
Yeah.
You sure as hell wouldn't have been a police officer because you would have been in more trouble.
So, like I'm a tough love type of dad. I'd like to think that my kids all know that I love them, but I'm very, very stern, very unemotional with them. Now, that doesn't stop me from telling them how proud of them I am. Like my middle son, unfortunately, he had to come home sick from school today, but before he got sick, he won the Academic Achievement Award in his class. Yesterday, my 8-year-old got the Academic Achievement Award in his class. And then a few days before that, my 8-year-old was on his baseball team, won the championship. He was selected to the All-Star team. And this is all my son's first year playing baseball, and I was so proud of him.
Oh,
and like sometimes it's really hard for me to express that because like I'm a very unemotional guy. So I do it in other ways. I find different ways, but
I hope I run into you in about 15 years, 14 years, when that 2-year-old daughter, or when she's 14, and I'll tell you, I'm kind of like that, very non-emotional. I have bad time, whatever, all those different things I didn't do. But there was a point, and you're going to run into this. I was driving down 7th Standard one day, and my oldest daughter, I think she was about 14, and she wasn't in the car with me. And I'm driving down the road, and I'm listening to the radio, going to work. And all of a sudden, I'm like, what the hell is this? And I got something in my eye. And I got a little tear coming out of my eye. And I'm listening to Stealing Cinderella.
Oh, it's a good jam.
Oh.
And I haven't heard that song in a minute.
But
I'm going to have to play it on the way home now.
Yeah, but it hit me.
That's a good song.
Son of a gun, someone's going to steal Cinderella. And I would bet you're going to find when that little girl's 14, 15, it's scary as hell.
So I will say my baby girl has 100% cracked the code. Like I am I'm so soft with her. Like I tell her 50 times a day how much I love her and how pretty she is, and I give her 1,000,000 kisses. And my other kids are like,
who's that?
Well, and it's funny because I'll do something with her, and then my sons will be like, "Hey, Mom, did Dad do that with us?" And she's like, "No, your dad wouldn't have been caught dead doing that with you." And I'm like, there's just something about her. Like
it's different.
Now, I love all of my kids the same. Like I actually posted this the other day on my TikTok, a story about like having favorites. And I say, if a parent has more than one kid, they have a favorite. They love all their kids the same.
Yeah.
But I 100% think without a doubt that every parent has a favorite. And I'm like, my baby girl is my favorite. There's not even a close second. If you ask my kids who the second is, it's my dog. They'll be like, oh, it's Tank.
Yeah,
100% it's Tank. But there was just something that happened when she was born, and I don't know how to explain it. And I think that only a dad that's witnessed the birth of their daughter could explain it, or could understand what I'm trying to explain. I delivered 2 of the 3 of my sons,
Oh, wow.
thankfully, and I got to deliver my baby girl. And, you know, watching my first son be born and deliver him was like, it was life-changing. He's Ronnie Jeffries III, like my namesake.
Yeah.
Like he's what made me like a legitimate parent, you know, like he was my firstborn child and my son and, you know, all this stuff. And I love him to death, you know, but like something about that little girl, the moment I pulled her out and I just looked at her, I was like, I'm so screwed.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I already knew that like if she asked me to buy her a Ferrari, I'd find the nearest bank and rob it.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and
it's only going to get worse.
yeah, and you know I wouldn't have it any other way because like that's my role as a dad with her. My role as a dad with my sons is to prepare them for life and to make sure that they're good men.
Yeah,
good, prepared, strong men. My job with my daughter is to show her what she should look for in a husband. So like what I try to do is like with my wife, I treat my wife like a queen. I've never raised my voice to my wife. I've never yelled at her. I've never called her a bad name. I've never even been mad at her.
no.
You know, in 15 years of being together, we've never fought. And that's one of the rules that one of the things that I said, like when we got together, I was like, I don't ever want to fight with you. Don't fight with me. We're adults. We can talk, you know, like, and so, you know, we've lived by that and our children have never seen us upset with each other. Now we disagree all the time.
So I'm going to tell you a story about that though, real quick. All 3 of my kids, they've never really seen me and my wife fight.
That's how it should be.
Well, it is, but unfortunately, what happened is now all 3 of them blame me and their mom for not knowing how to argue, and yeah, they're like, well, we never saw you guys argue, so we don't know how.
Yeah,
but yeah, 35 years, and they've never. I would bet my son has probably never seen me raise my voice to my wife.
Yeah,
because I don't believe in it.
Yeah, I would never raise my voice to my wife. Like she's the queen of my house.
Now
like,
my son. That's different.
Oh, yeah. My sons hear it probably daily.
Yes, exactly. They have a way.
Oh, God, they do. They know how to just push that button. But, you know, my wife, you know, we've lived by that kind of rule in our house. And, you know, like, I don't ever want my kids to grow up in a broken home. I would never, like, me and my wife are rock solid. We'll never split up. But, like, I just want my sons to know how they should treat a woman.
Exactly.
And then I need my daughters to understand how a man should treat them. You know, and my oldest daughter, 18, she's got a little boyfriend now. You know, thankfully he's a good kid. I'd never tell him that to his face though. But
he's probably scared to death if he's smart.
I just tell him. I said, there's a couple things you need to know, or you need to do right. You need to treat her right, and you need to make her happy. If you do those 2 things, you're not going to have a whole lot of problems for me. I said, however, I am not Amazon. I have a no return policy. Once you take her out of my house and you like decide you're going to marry her or something like that, you better be for real forever. Like there's no returns. Don't bring her back.
That's the way it goes.
Yeah. Her room will be taken as soon as she's gone. But, you know, and I think ultimately that's my job, my purpose.
Yeah.
The stuff I do on the side is just that. It's what I do on the side.
Yeah.
It's not my calling or anything. I used to think that being a police officer was my calling. 100%. It's just being a dad.
Just being
and
a
good
dad.
husband. Like
that's cool.
Being involved and all this other stuff is just, it's cool. You know, my sons love it. My kids love, oh, my dad did this and did that. And I'm like, dude, none of that pales in comparison to being your dad.
But that puts them in their eyes. Yeah. That's kind of the cool part of that.
And I like that. And now my oldest son is talking about going to the military and stuff like that. So I'm having to navigate that obstacle course and those hurdles. But you know, at the end of the day, I tell my wife, like, I don't ever want to discourage him from something that he truly wants to do.
Right.
I just want to help encourage him and give him an educated perspective on it.
Yeah, make sure he knows all the ins and outs. So, well, we've been at it for quite a while, actually. Nice. So, So I figure we probably better wrap it up. Are there any, definitely put your contact out there again. What's the best way to reach you?
So, best way to reach me is going to be through my Instagram. It's JFT_actual. Same thing on TikTok. You could just reach out through DM or whatever. If you see me on the Kern County website, my phone number's on there. You feel free to text me, call me. If you have any questions about the process to get a concealed weapons permit, or you have questions about classes, private lessons, anything under the sun, kids training, feel free to reach out, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have or to fulfill any training needs that you guys have out there.
Oh, very good. Like I said, Your stories are awesome. I really appreciate you coming in. This was a fun one.
I'd be happy to come anytime. I love doing these. It's a good time, and it's always fun to kind of, sometimes I get to know myself a little better through doing stuff like this, because sometimes I say some things that I bring up things that I haven't really thought about in years and years. Yeah. And it's always fun to reminisce about things, and on top of that is to put out things that are, like, this is going to sound corny, but like tough for me to say to like my kids to their face. They can always watch something like this and realize, like, oh, he does love me.
Kids will never understand how hard that. If we weren't raised, I mean, I'm much older than you, but we were not raised that way. I could tell you, I cannot think of one time when I was a kid that my dad ever said he loved me. I knew he did, but he never said it. I mean,
yeah. It was like an unspoken thing.
It was just, exactly what
like
it
I said,
was.
when my dad finally told me, I thought I was going to die. He was like, why did he just say this? Does he know something I don't?
I better say that.
Yeah, I'm like, holy smokes. Like,
well, that is awesome. Like I said, I definitely recommend more and more people get out there and take your training, and your methods, I think, are pretty awesome. So thank you very much for coming today and enlightening us a little bit.
Oh, anytime. I love you guys, love your company, love what you guys are about. Like, that's why we've been working together so long. And
we'll keep doing it.
I'm here anytime you guys want. And if you guys want to jump in a class or whatever, Valentine's Day class or a dad's class, or you want to do a podcast while or before one of those, like, I'm all for it.
That would be pretty cool. Actually, that would be very cool. But I definitely want to get my wife and I out there together, and I need to become a better shot. So I need more. Both. I need more training. She shoots so much better than me. It makes me look bad.
Women are good at following directions. That's a problem. Women are very good at going step by step, whereas men, we have an ego and we'll go A to Z.
Yes, exactly. So, well, I appreciate it. Like I said, we ran an hour and 45 minutes in. That's probably quite a bit longer than normal, but great stuff.
Thank you. I appreciate it.